right out of the gate, I'm finding some serious blockers to being able to support the recompile and continue playing functionality. So the key things that are blocking me right now are two things. One is Unity does support static memory. It does support the serialization of static. In some cases, it seems to clear things out at its whim and then reset them at its whim. So maybe data types. I'll have to dive farther into that. But the storage of interfaces at all in its serialization and deserialization for being able to support recompile and continue playing is non-existent. At least from my initial tests, and I'm going to walk you through what I did. Now, for those of you who are just starting this video as your first one, this is part of an architectural test where we're seeing what it takes to actually get Unity, what kind of architectures we can put into place, to what problems we can solve in programming that still support the recompile and continue feature. And if there are workarounds to get around some of the problems we face. So there's an initial video that talks about some of those key challenges, and I'll keep a link to that down in the description. Also, all of the source code for this project is available in the description. So let's go into the actual project here, and I have two key objects. One is I have a scorekeeper. This is called score counter, and it has an integer that holds onto the score, and it has a UI that references the text for it. Okay. So that text is being stored and it gets updated every time that inside of here, let's go into the code, an add score function gets called. So if something calls add score, it will get the score incremented by whatever we passed in and then set the text to equal that score. Okay, so from here, Cube has another script. It has score clicker. This is what is triggering it. And right now in the code, first off, we're not actually setting a reference here. That's important. Okay, our reference is coming from the singleton instance of score counter. So we get that, and then we also get the interface. So we're doing two passes at this. The first one is through the interface reference, we're telling it to add 1 point. So it should go up by 1. And then through the object reference, we're passing in 2 points to the score. So now it should have gone up a total of 3 points altogether, 1 and 2. So let's actually test this out and see what happens. The code is fairly basic to what most people have probably worked with in Unity. So I would expect everyone assumes this part is just going to work. And you're right, it is. So when I click this, it goes up to 3 and then to 6 and then 9, etc. So I can click it, I'll just bring it up to a nice even 30. Okay. So now that I'm at 30, I'm going to go back into my code, and I did not stop the game. Remember, that's the big thing. We need to recompile and continue in this. So inside of here, I'm going to comment out this line. I'm going to take out that breakpoint too. I'm going to hit save and return to Unity. It didn't return right away because it was recompiling, and sometimes if it captures it at that moment of recompiling, Unity is frozen and doesn't pop back up yet. Okay, so in this, now when I click this, I should be only getting 2 points, not the 1 point. But this is a point where that doesn't work anymore. I click on it. Oh, wait, no, sorry. This was the point where it does work. My mistake. It went up by 2 points. So this part worked. And you can see it still holds the reference here. And over here in click counter, it's also holding the reference, 32. It remembered the score that we were using. Okay, so I return to the code, again, not stopping it. And now I'm going to put this interface call back. Save it and return it. Now we should go from 32 points to 35. It should be calling it to add 1 point and then 2 points. So we should go 33, 34, 35. Okay, let's click. Nothing. Except down here I get a null reference exception. If you didn't notice that, I'll click again. You can see the null reference exceptions are piling up. Okay, so it's score clicker line 23. So score clicker line 23 is where we are adding score through the interface. Let's put the breakpoint here, attach to Unity, go back to Unity and click. Now, if anyone has seen a solution for this, this is a side problem right now. Sometimes Visual Studio, when a breakpoint gets triggered, will pop into focus. And great, I get to see that's what's happening. If not, Unity just effectively kind of freezes, and now nothing is responsive effectively. I can click all over the place in here, nothing happens. Because of the fact that it is in a breakpoint. If someone can explain in the comments why that happens, like why Visual Studio doesn't always take focus, or if there is a fix for it, that would be even better. I would love for it to stably take focus every time. All right, so when it's on this line, this was the line that was breaking it. If I go here, iScore counter is null. Now score counter is not. Remember, over here, this is the interface. iScore counter references the iScore counter A. This is the interface reference to it. These are both pointing to the exact same object, or were pointing to the exact same object. But during the serialization and deserialization process, this one was lost. The interface was lost. The other one, oops. The other one was not lost. Okay. So now inside of here, this one is broken. This line will crash it again if I let it continue. So I'm actually going to skip that line, move this to the next, because I want to show you another thing that happened here. If I go into my code, if I skip into this function, because this reference is working to get to this object, the instance here is also null. The static instance is null. So when we had a static instance of something to try using a singleton to support this, it was lost. But that's an even bigger issue because of the fact that it doesn't matter if I'm using this as an interface. Let me stop the code and save the change I just made. So this static instance is now using a direct reference to the object. It's not going to be using an interface to the object anymore. So inside of here, I'm going to stop the code, and then I'll replay again. So my code should initially work. I click on this, I should get 3 points, 6, 9, etc. And now I'm going to put a breakpoint in the code. I'm going to put a breakpoint. I'll just put it right here, attached to Unity. And let's click again. Okay. Oh, and it broke it here. I'm just going to stop that one. Continue. There we go. Now the instance up here is still referencing it. Oh, I didn't make a change to the code yet. I'm losing it here. Okay, so in this one, I'm going to stop the code. So the game is still running. I'm going to make a change here. I'm going to say score equals score. Yeah, let's do it with the capital score. Okay, so that's really messing with this. So it's going to say no matter what it is, whatever score we get in, it's basically going to double it. So if we get in 2 points, it'll be 4 points. If we get in 1 point, it'll be 2 points. But we get in 1 point and then we get in 2 points. So it's actually going to end up being 4 points at the end. But whatever the case is, we just changed the code and we're putting a breakpoint back in. Okay, and you saw that the instance, that static instance was there. That value was there. So we've got the breakpoint in, we're returning to the code, I'm going to click, and I get a null reference. Oh, the null reference on line 23, so I didn't even get to trigger the breakpoint that I wanted. Let's put that here. That's right, I recompiled, the interface here was lost, that was expected. Let's return to this, click again, and skip this line, and then continue to the next breakpoint. Okay, so we've set the score, and now we're back to instance. Instance is null again. That idea of being able to use a singleton, which is very common to game developers, to Unity developers, that feature is lost in recompile and continue. So we need to consider options that would allow us to get away from this. And we also need to consider what are some of the challenges. For instance, when you want to store a reference to something, when you want to get a reference to something that is outside of the scene, you need to have that ability to access it. You need to be able to ask like a locator or dependency injection. So we are saving a prefab. A prefab can't save references outside of that prefab to other things inside the scene. Now, there are alternatives that we can support here, and that is scriptable objects. So we can still use scriptable objects to get around this. Now, some other people are going to run into issues. I know that there is a very heavy lockdown at some projects where they are using interfaces. Now, you can get away without using interfaces in a lot of projects, but some of them you really need that layer of abstraction, which you can do through abstract classes as well. But I'm going to pose to you this one challenge. Some of the projects that I've worked on have had a support DLL that then gets spread out to multiple teams to use. So that introduces a problem where we have interfaces to support those objects inside of our root libraries so that one of these other libraries can exchange it with something else in its dependency injection or service locator, whatever it's using. And we need to be able to exchange that reference out. But if we can't support interfaces with this, then if we do that, we've just lost the feature for compile and continue. So ideally, I'd prefer to be able to keep those, but then it's going to question how much work is this going to take. And this is a big discussion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like what are some of the challenge areas? What are some of the solutions along the way? Did I miss something in my test? Am I doing something wrong? Or is there another way that I could approach this that would allow this to work? Is there an attribute that I can add that I'm unaware of that allows it to serialize this? Maybe even attaching Odin on top of it, since Odin has more support for interfaces to be able to work inside of the inspector, that it might be doing something with the serialization process. Now, I doubt it. It's probably more along the lines of just taking those attributes and figuring out what they're attached to on the objects and then writing its own custom visualization of the editor. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm not sure. I might test that in Odin later. If you have tests you want to get to run on this, the same code base I'm using for this is down in the references down below in the description. It's on GitHub, and it's freely available. Anyone is welcome to use this to experiment, to try out, and please share the results if you try tests, testing different ways. What were you testing? What were the results so that we can get more of this out here quickly? All right, great. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear the challenges, concerns that you have. Let's talk about this. Thanks.